In March 2026, about 8 weeks before she died, Joni Lamb signed a legal document. It was called a quitclaim deed. Most people will never hear about it. Most channels covering this story aren't touching it. But that one document, filed quietly without any announcement, may be the most revealing thing Joni Lamb did in the final chapter of her life. Because what that document did was simple. It took a $3 million beach condo in Florida, a property she had bought together with her husband Doug Weiss, and moved it out of their joint ownership and into her own personal trust. Alone. She removed Doug Weiss from a $3 million property 8 weeks before she died. And the question that nobody is asking loudly enough is, why? To understand why that quitclaim deed matters, you have to understand who Doug Weiss is. Because most people watching this video probably only know one thing about him. He married Joni Lamb. But there is a lot more to this story than that. Doug Weiss is a psychologist and author based in Colorado Springs. He specializes, and I want you to sit with this, in sex addiction and intimacy counseling. That is his professional niche. He runs a center called Heart-to-Heart Counseling, where couples dealing with infidelity, sexual addiction, and broken marriages pay thousands of dollars for intensive multi-day therapy sessions. He has written dozens of books on the subject. He has appeared on Daystar television as a guest many times, talking about marriages, healing, restoration, the sanctity of the covenant between husband and wife. On camera, Doug Weiss was the man with the answers, the expert, the healer. Trusted by Christian couples at some of their most vulnerable moments of their lives. And then, something happened. Marcus Lamb, Joni's first husband and co-founder of Daystar, died on November 30th, 2021. 57 days later, January 27th, 2022, Doug Weiss filed for divorce from his wife of over 30 years. Let me say that again. Marcus Lamb died November 30th. Doug Weiss filed for divorce January 27th. That is 57 days, less than 2 months. Now, at this point, I'm going to let you draw your own conclusions. I'm not going to tell you what to think. What I will do is keep giving you facts, and then, at the end, you tell me what you think in the comments. But the timing is something. Here is where this story gets even more troubling. Doug Weiss filed for divorce in January 2022. The divorce was granted in May 2022, but he did not announce his divorce publicly until February 8, 2023. That is 8 months. 8 months where Doug Weiss was divorced, his marriage of 30 years over, and the public did not know. And during those 8 months, he was still running heart-to-heart counseling, still taking in couples who were dealing with betrayal, sex addiction, broken trust, still presenting himself on his website and in his materials as a marriage expert. According to 7 former female clients who spoke to investigative journalist Julie Roys, they felt completely betrayed when they found out. These were women who had come to him because their husbands had been unfaithful, women in some of the most painful seasons of their lives, and the man counseling them to trust, to heal, to rebuild, was secretly divorced. One woman said she felt gaslit. Another said she felt shamed for asking questions. Several said they left feeling more traumatized than when they arrived. And there is one more detail here that nobody is connecting loudly enough. Before Marcus Lamb died, when Doug Weiss appeared on Daystar as a guest, Marcus himself sat across from Weiss on camera and praised Weiss's wife, Lisa. Marcus said on air that Lisa was almost like Joni, that she had the purest heart. That was the Doug Weiss that Joni Lamb's first husband knew. A man with a devoted wife, a stable marriage, a Christian counselor whose personal life matched what he preached. And then Marcus died, and 57 days later, that marriage was gone. Now here is where the story moves from uncomfortable to something that should anger every person who ever donated $1 to Daystar television network. After Marcus died and Doug Weiss quietly began pursuing Joni, or Joni began pursuing him, depending on whose account you believe, Daystar's ministry jet started flying a very particular route. Flight records show that from October 2022 onward, Daystar's Gulfstream jet made 24 round-trip flights from Fort Worth to Colorado Springs, where Doug Weiss lives and works, and 13 round-trip flights from Fort Worth to Destin, Florida, near the beach area where the couple later purchased that $2.9 million condo. The estimated cost of those flights? Over $769,000. $769,000 on a ministry jet, paid for by the donations of Daystar viewers. And the flights to Colorado Springs only made sense when Joni Lamb announced in March 2023 that she was engaged to Doug Weiss. It gets worse. Reports emerged with documentation that Joni Lamb charged a $100,000 honeymoon to Daystar's ministry credit card. When the charges became public, she reimbursed the ministry. But the question that hangs in the air is, would anyone have ever known if it hadn't been discovered? And let me be very clear about something. This is a non-profit ministry, a Christian organization built on the donations of believers who gave their money to spread the gospel to the world, people who tithed, who gave sacrificially, who trusted that their money was going to reach the world with the message of Jesus Christ. Not to fund courtship flights to Colorado Springs, not to pay for a $100,000 honeymoon, not for any of this. Now, Joni Lamb had defenders who said she was grieving, that she was lonely, that Marcus himself had told her to remarry, that she fell in love and made some mistakes in the process. Maybe that is part of the story. But the money trail does not lie, and the money trail leads directly to Doug Weiss. Before we get into the quitclaim deed, because that is the part of this story that I personally cannot stop thinking about, I want to pause for a second. We are inside part 2 of our Daystar series, and if you are just finding this channel, welcome. Drop in the comments right now, where in the world are you watching from? We've got people joining us from the UK, the US, Canada, South Africa, all over, and I want to know where you are. And more importantly, I want to know what you think, because at the end of this video, I'm going to ask you a very specific question about Doug Weiss, and your answer is going to tell us a lot about where this community stands. If you have not watched part 1 of this series, the link is in the description. Start there. This story makes so much more sense when you have the full picture. All right, now let's talk about that quitclaim deed, because this is the part that keeps me up at night. In September 2023, just 3 months after their wedding, Joni Lamb and Doug Weiss purchased a beach condo near Destin, Florida. The purchase price was approximately $2.9 million. It was a joint purchase. Their names were both on it. A married couple buying a home together. On the surface, nothing unusual. Fast forward to March 2026. Joni Lamb, who at this point was fighting a battle with metastatic bone cancer that she had told almost no one about, filed a quitclaim deed. For those who don't know what a quitclaim deed is, let me explain it simply. A quitclaim deed transfers your ownership interest in a property to someone else, or in this case, to yourself. Specifically, it moved the Florida condo out of their joint marital ownership and into Joni Lamb's own personal revocable trust. Her trust, not their trust, her trust. Doug Weiss's name was removed from a $2.9 million property, 8 weeks before Joni Lamb died. Now, there are legal reasons why a person might do this. Estate planning is one of them. When someone is ill and knows they may not have much time, they sometimes restructure their assets to ensure they go where the person wants them to go after death. A personal revocable trust gives you control over exactly who inherits what. That is one possible explanation. But here is the question you have to sit with. Who was she protecting that money from? She has 3 children, Jonathan, Rachel, and Rebecca. She had a second husband, Doug Weiss, and she had a multi-state real estate portfolio worth over $11 million in addition to an estimated net worth of $40 million. If this was simply responsible estate planning, why remove Doug specifically from the Florida condo? Why that property? Why in March 2026? Why, in the final weeks of a cancer battle she had kept hidden from the world, did she make this particular legal move? I am not going to answer that for you, because I don't know the answer. Nobody does. Joni Lamb took that answer with her. But here is what I will say. A woman who had been married to Doug Weiss for less than 3 years, a woman who had watched her son Jonathan get fired from the ministry his own father built, partly because Jonathan refused to publicly support her marriage to this man. A woman who, according to her daughter-in-law Susie, gave Jonathan's family no opportunity to say goodbye in her final hours. That woman, in March 2026, quietly removed her husband from a $3 million piece of property. That is not nothing. On April 30th, 2026, 1 week before she died, Joni Lamb posted something on social media. It was a message about hope and faith in the middle of difficulty, about waiting on God, about trusting that everything has its right time, even when nothing feels like it is going your way. At the time, people shared it, they praised it, they called it beautiful and timely. But after she died 7 days later, people went back to it. And suddenly, it read very differently. Was it a message of general faith, or was it a woman who knew she was running out of time, leaving something behind for people to hold on to? And here is the detail that adds another layer to this. On the very night before that post, the evening of April 29th, Joni Lamb and Doug Weiss were a no-show at a birthday celebration for their close friend Paula White, an event Joni reportedly never missed. People who knew her noticed immediately. She was already in serious decline. The cancer that nobody knew about was doing its work. And in the days that followed, as her condition became critical, the people closest to her were making decisions about who would and who would not be by her side. Jonathan was never called. When Joni Lamb died on May 7th, Doug Weiss issued a statement. He wrote, and I want to read this carefully, "Today, I lost my wife, Joni. There are no words that really capture the weight of that sentence or the grief that comes with it. She was deeply loved, and the space she leaves behind is impossible to put into words." It was measured, emotional, appropriate, and then silence. No detailed statement about her health status, No explanation of the timeline. No comment on the succession of Daystar. No response to the questions circulating online about the quitclaim deed. No acknowledgement of Jonathan and Susie's posts about not being called. Just grief and silence. Now, some people will say, give the man space. He just lost his wife. He doesn't owe anyone an explanation in the middle of grief. And that is fair. But here is the context you need to hold alongside that. This is a man who built his entire public career on communication, on transparency, on helping couples navigate the hardest conversations of their lives, on speaking the truth even when it is painful. He has a platform. He had access to Joni's medical situation that the public did not. He was there, or he was not, in her final days. And the man whose entire brand is healing through honesty chose silence. Let me give you the full picture of what we actually know. Joni Lamb spent the last 3 years of her life in a marriage that fractured her family. Her son, Jonathan, and every one of her other children opposed that marriage on biblical grounds. Her friend, Denise Boggs, wrote a heartfelt letter begging the family to intervene before the wedding. Jonathan and Susie were fired, demoted, tracked, and followed, in part because they would not publicly endorse that marriage on air. And at the end of it all, in the final weeks of a cancer battle she fought completely alone, Joni Lamb signed a legal document that removed Doug Weiss from a $3 million property. I want you to think about what that says. This woman was not naive. She was not passive. She built a billion-dollar media empire. She survived a husband's public confession of an affair. She ran one of the largest Christian TV networks in the world for 40 years. When Joni Lamb signed a legal document, she knew exactly what she was signing. The question of whether that was a last-minute act of protection for her children, for her estate, for her legacy, or whether it was something else entirely, that is a question only God and Joni Lamb know the answer to. But the facts are in the public record. The deed is filed, the timeline is documented, and the silence from Doug Weiss is deafening. Here is where things stand right now. A quitclaim deed was filed in March 2026, removing Doug Weiss from a $2.9 million beach condo. Joni's $40 million estate, including a multi-state property portfolio worth over $11 million, is now the subject of intense private legal activity. Jonathan Lamb, the son who was cut off, fired, tracked, and not called to say goodbye, remains outside the organization. And Doug Weiss, the man who married Joni after a 57-day window following Marcus's death, is now her widower, with unclear ties to Daystar going forward. This story is not over, not even close. Now I want to hear from you. Drop in the comments, do you think Joni Lamb was protecting her children's inheritance from Doug Weiss with that quitclaim deed? Or do you think this was simply estate planning? And if you haven't subscribed yet, please do it right now. Because in part 3 of this series, we are going to talk about something that sent chills down my spine when I found it. Marcus Lamb left a signed, written directive naming Jonathan as the head of Daystar after Joni. Jonathan is currently locked out of the building, and there may now be a legal fight coming that could shake the foundation of this entire network. You do not want to miss that video. I will see you in part 3.